So that's why he's called Hodor? Hey folks, Charlie in Westeros here, and I'm back again to discuss Game of Thrones episode 5 of season 6, entitled The Door. And the image of the door certainly played an important role this episode, not just from Hodor's predetermined fate, but especially from getting a glimpse into the doorways of different characters' past and even potential futures, and this episode really provided so many more questions than answers for the series as a whole. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump right into discussing this episode by starting off with things at Braavos. Evidently, the whole scene where Arya is instructed to kill the actress portraying Cersei was totally a test to see whether or not she has truly given up her former self as Arya Stark. And judging by the way she reacts to the reenactment of Ned Stark's execution, I think it's quite obvious that she hasn't fully given up her past identity as Arya Stark. Whether she is able to follow through with her ability to kill an actress she perceives to be innocent is one thing, but Jack and Agar revealed some interesting thoughts about the origins of the Faceless Men. That is, the fact that the first Faceless Men were slaves who learned the gift from this many-faced god and gradually killed all their masters in Valyria before fleeing to Braavos, acts as a nice parallel to the latter scene with the origins of the White Walkers, actually, who effectively were created as tools of the Children of the Forest to be used against mankind, but then rebelled against their creators, and as of this episode, and as far as we know, effectively extinguished the last of their creators' species. I am entering crackpot territory here, but I do think it would be interesting if this many-faced god who taught the first Faceless Men was in fact a Valyrian, maybe even a Targaryen. It would fit in well with the parallel between the two groups thus far anyway. I could say so much more on that, but I will leave those thoughts for a later theory video. I think now is a good point to move on to events in the Dothraki Sea and Meereen. I don't have too much to say about Daenerys this episode, though I do wonder if Jorah Mormont will be able to find a cure for his grayscale. If he does, it would be interesting to see him return to Westeros and go back to his family at Bears Island. As we heard Sansa mention this episode, she plans to unite the North against the Boltons, and the Mormonts are one of those families whose backing she needs. So Jorah and the Mormonts could later on potentially act as the right individuals to either broker an alliance between Jon and Dany, or at the very least introduce the two characters should they ever have the chance to meet. Events at Meereen were also fairly straightforward, but I do wish the Red Priestess Kinvara would have revealed what the voices in the flames told Varys the night he was castrated, and who exactly spoke them. These questions, coupled with the fact that not only Kinvara implied Varys' castration permitted him to serve the right lord, but also Bran's impact on Hodor's own past, does make me wonder if there isn't some other Bran-like figure who is affecting some of these characters directly in some time traveler-like way, orchestrating the way their lives are meant to play out. Just want to offer that as food for thought anyway, if that made any sense. The Iron Islands also gave me more questions than answers. For one thing, Yara's questioning of Euron staying young not only makes one wonder just how he was able to preserve his youth, but also where he has traveled to at least maintain that appearance anyway. Perhaps he made a stop at Asshai and learned a thing or two about glamoring his appearance like Melisandre? Or maybe he stayed frozen in time somehow. Again, just so many questions. One thing I am willing to assume, however, is that Yara and Theon are totally traveling to Meereen with their fleet. Now, part of me did wonder how Euron knows Dany needed a fleet in the first place, but clearly Yara will likely be offering her assistance to Dany in some way. I liked a few things about the Greyjoy scenes here. For one thing, I'm so happy they didn't just magically show all the Iron Islanders being magically swayed to Euron's cause, but that Yara did in fact retain some loyalty amongst the Ironborn. And I also like the fact that Theon is starting to become a little bit more brave, or brazen as a character once again. With all that said, I want to now address events at Castle Black. In terms of show rationale, I think a lot of characters made some very poignant comments in this scene. I was, for example, so happy to see Sansa interrogate Littlefinger with all the right questions, such as how he didn't know the kind of person Ramsay was, and if he did, then why would he put her in harm's way like that? This not only shows that Sansa is truly no longer the foolish girl she once was, but it also demonstrates that Baelish will stop at absolutely nothing to achieve his goals. That said, I think Baelish will have to win back Sansa's loyalty for some selfish reason to further his own agenda, not merely, though, through offering military support to her cause, but also in other actions. I made a prediction some time ago that Baelish would bring about vengeance against the Freys, and certainly he would make for a great candidate in that respect if Arya isn't the one to off old Walder Frey this season. Baelish's last remark to Sansa that there might come a time when she'll need an army loyal to her also makes me wonder if she could potentially obtain Riverrun for herself at some point, should her uncle and great-uncle be killed off in the show. Again, I'm just speculating, and I am sure you fine folks on YouTube would have some much better ideas on that, and I would absolutely love to hear them. Now, before glossing over the North too much, I must say that I am still very much digging the possibility of a relationship between Brienne and Tormund, and I especially enjoyed Brienne's observation on Jon's rather broody, aka emo personality. Alright, now time to talk about the real meat of the episode, events in the far north. I gotta say, I'm very happy I avoided posting my video on the White Walkers and Valyria last week, because this episode does potentially change things up a fair bit for some of my own theories. The fact that Children of the Forest created the White Walkers isn't the biggest shock for me necessarily, but it was a bit strange considering the chronology of events as far as they are presented in the books. The way things are laid out in A Song of Ice and Fire is that the first men and the children warred, and then made peace, but this was all way before the White Walkers first appeared some 2,000 years after those events. Now, certainly we could say events in the books and the TV series will be quite different concerning the earlier years of Westerosi history, but if they aren't, then this is one topic that merits its own discussion. I wasn't lying when I said this episode opened the doors for so many questions. Of course, the demise of both Summer, the direwolf, and Hodor this episode was devastating, but what I found quite shocking is that the entire purpose of Hodor's life, from the moment Bran traveled back in time and seemingly gave him a vision of the future, was to basically hold a door in allowing Mira and Bran the opportunity to escape from the White Walkers. And as I alluded to earlier, this whole notion of destiny does seem to affect quite a few characters in the series. It is also interesting that the very creatures that Children of the Forest created to protect their lives effectively resulted in their own extinction. While I hypothesized a similar thing with the Faceless Men towards the Valyrian slave masters, part of me does wonder if this doesn't also tie into the demise of Valyria as a whole, potentially as well. I totally realize I'm digressing here, but I do want to add one last theory to this scene. We evidently saw Bran being grabbed by the Night's King, allowing the latter to break into the Three-Eyed Raven's tree. I do also wonder if this effect might also result in the White Walkers going south of the Wall by the end of the season. A few of my fellow YouTubers have hypothesized that the Wall would come down this season, and I certainly am inclined to agree with them on that point, but again, I do wonder if the Night's King's ability to get to Bran due to grabbing him may not inadvertently allow the White Walkers to also cross the Wall itself, should Bran himself also travel south as well. Again, if I'm making any sense at all. And yes, I realize I just have so many random thoughts, so I think this is a good time to ask you all what you folks think, and what you all have to say about this episode. Personally, this was one of my favorites so far for the season, and I am absolutely looking forward to the next week's, especially with respect to events at King's Landing. As always, don't hesitate to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. This many-faced god who taught the first